Welcome to Talks with Sheba, where real people have real answers about what's plaguing our communities today. Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Sheba Holly. Thanks for joining us tonight. We invite, excite, educate, and empower. So let's talk. Let's talk about that 30 million word gap amongst children and their socio-economic status that impacts it. Why is that? Let's hear.
So it turns out, as many of you all know, I was not the first to notice these unfortunate differences. In fact, some 50 years earlier, researchers Betty Hart and Todd Risley, in the midst of the war on poverty, who were confronted by a similar dilemma, refused to accept the prevailing answer to the day as to why children from poor homes didn't do as well, which was, of course, the answer was genetics back then. Their landmark study helped me to understand that one of the critical forces in a child's ability to learn was his or her early language environment. Their study demonstrated that by the end of the age of 3, children born into poverty will have heard 30 million fewer words than their more affluent peers. But of course, quantity is only one part of the issue, as we all know. Quality plays a huge role, and in fact, even their study, which doesn't get much airtime, demonstrated huge differences in affirmations versus prohibitions. Don't do that, stop that. Differences in verbal back and forth, differences in quality of vocabulary. Often called the 30 million word gap or the word gap, these differences were correlated not only with vocabulary at the age of 3, but importantly, differences in test scores and IQ in the 3rd grade. In other words, how many words a child heard in their first 3 years of life and how they were spoken were critical factors in children's school readiness, catapulting some to the top and sending some to languish at the bottom. A division so prevalent and so expectable that we actually have a name for it, the achievement gap. But Hart and Risley's study and the enormous body of research that has followed has demonstrated that while on first glance, socioeconomic status appears to be the critical and only factor, in fact, after careful analysis, language plays a huge role in this.
Tonight we have Dia Michels, the guru of breastfeeding. And we're here to talk about that 30 million word gap. This is serious business. I mean, when children go to school, we always say, well, did their parents teach them at home? What's going on?
Well, it's really interesting because we've had so much emphasis on making the schools better. We've had the Common Core, we've had No Child Left Behind, we've had this tremendous emphasis bringing in new superintendents, doing testing and testing and testing. Well, now what they've decided is that the key differences are established well before anyone starts school, well before anyone starts Head Start, and well before anyone starts early Head Start. So the key differences are happening in the home in the youngest years. And that's where we're finding that they're not making the difference because all the programs are geared towards school.
Well, first of all, you are the guru of breastfeeding. Let's talk about that for a second. So how did you start with the whole breastfeeding?
I ended up writing a book called Milk, Money, and Madness, The Culture and Politics of Breastfeeding. Okay. The book actually just went out of print. It's been about 25 years. And in the book, it became so clear that breastfeeding was the absolute key to world peace, for an extreme, and that it wasn't happening for all the wrong reasons. Okay. It wasn't happening because companies that were making profit were undermining women's confidence, were buying out the medical industry, were providing misinformation. And so once you start looking at breastfeeding, you're looking at early childhood development. Once you're looking at early childhood development, you're looking at human development and human potential, and it all melds into one big circle.
And you got into that, and that has been something you advocate for. And child safety, the whole sleeping with the mom.
Right. Well, the real question is, how do you grow a human? Right?
How do you grow a
Right.
human?
We know how you grow an animal, right? We know how you grow a healthy cat. We know how you grow a healthy dog. How do you grow a healthy human? And there's a few things that are absolutely hardwired, absolutely locked in. Humans are social. They need incredible amounts of stimulation. Humans are born with the lowest functioning capacity of any mammal. Our brains are immature, our bodies aren't developed. I mean, you think of some mammals, like the hooded seal, it goes from infancy to fully grown in 4 days. What about a human?
Wow.
Right? Humans need to learn from their environment, the whole nature versus nurture thing.
Absolutely.
And so we have all of these years to learn from our environment. And the question is, what happens in those years? And it turns out, in terms of brain's development, it happens in youth, like little youth, the first few years.
So what made you cross over and start advocating for word count?
I think if you're interested in literacy, and I'm a book publisher, so I'm interested in words. If you're interested in how you make somebody thrive, you have to look at what happens in those early years. And in those early years, the thing that really happens is the 5 senses get stimulated. You have 5 senses. Of those 5, sight makes a huge impact on brain development. Turns out sound does as well. And every time a baby hears a word, neurons start firing. Every single word, doesn't matter if it's in 1 language or 2 languages or 3 languages, neurons are firing. And so when you hear words, you're growing brains. And so the word gap basically says, if you don't hear as many words, you don't have as many neurons firing, you don't have as much brain development.
Okay, so when you think about the words and the nurturing and how that ties with the breastfeeding and the sleeping with the mother so you can breastfeed.
Right. Well, let's start at where society starts.
Okay.
So society starts with the achievement gap. So the achievement gap has been well studied for the last 60 years, since the war on poverty. Remember the war on poverty? They accomplished a lot.
Right.
Maybe not. So it starts with the war on poverty. It starts with the achievement gap. And what the achievement gap says is, it doesn't matter if you're white or black or Chinese. It doesn't matter, if you're working class. It doesn't matter what religion you are. What matters is your socio-economic status.
Okay.
That if you come from a family that has access to resources, you will achieve. If you don't, you won't achieve. And so that's where it starts. Clear data. In fact, I printed out right here. It's not very good. So it's called the income achievement gap. And basically what it says is, if you have money, you'll achieve. If you don't have money, you won't.
Okay.
And so that happens to line up perfectly with poverty, right?
Right.
If you have money, you're fine. If you're in poverty, you're not fine. And so the war on poverty started. And I was listening to a TED Talk yesterday. I think they said we've spent $5 trillion on the war on poverty. Huge amount. Now we have close to 50% of our nation's children in the WIC program.
Okay.
So clearly we didn't solve the war on poverty.
Right.
So if you look at the achievement gap, it's totally based on income. Then if you bring it down to the word gap, it's completely based on income. And then if you look at the breastfeeding gap, where do you think I'm going with this?
Okay.
So I printed it out. Percentage of mothers breastfeeding their infants by poverty status. You'll never believe. If you're in poverty, breastfeeding rates are low.
Right.
If you're not in poverty, breastfeeding rates are high. So now if you line up the achievement gap and the breastfeeding gap, it's the same thing. There's only one gap. Now nobody's connecting these dots. They're connecting these dots, which is, this one's cumulative language experience.
Okay.
So cumulative language experience says the more money you have, the more you talk. And there's all sorts of reasons for this. I mean, certainly,
Stress.
let's get to very, very basics. The more money you have, the less you might be working. Right?
Right.
Because the more money you have, you either have a spouse or a support system, and you're working one job or none, but you're not working 2. So you have resources. When you get sick, you can go to the doctor. Grocery shopping is not a big deal. You don't have to take 3 buses to get to a grocery store. So there are very real reasons why people with more income talk more. They're physically with the babies more, and they're not as stressed, as you said.
It's a stress. It's a stress because usually when someone's stressed, and that's someone with low income, they go inside themselves. It's a depression.
Right.
So when you're in depression, you don't want to talk.
Or you're working all the time.
Yeah, that's true too.
Right. You're simply working all the time. And so what we find is the word gap is summarized by this 30 million words, right? That you take 2 kids, one of them is a poverty mom, and the other one's not, a high functioning, educated mom. And this mom may be talking to her kid plenty, but she may see things like, look at the fire truck, or we should go grocery shopping. But the other mom is saying, look at the fire truck. It is so bright red. What do you have that's that red? She may be saying, how many boots are on that truck? We don't even have that many shoes in our whole house. So she's having a whole conversation. The other mom may be saying, no, great, now we have to stop. There's a fire truck. So one is the amount of words, just the sheer amount of words. But another is adjectives.
Okay.
Whoever knew that the difference in achievement was based on adjectives?
Okay.
That one mom's describing, one mom's not describing.
Right.
And then the other is the messages. The mom who's not speaking a lot to her kids is giving orders. Put your shoes on now. Sit down now. Eat your food now. We're going to go out the door now. Get your jacket now. The other mom is saying, where did you put that jacket? I haven't seen that jacket in a long time. Do you think the dog picked up the jacket? We should find your jacket because we need to get going. And so it's a difference in not just adjectives, not just imperatives, but in the whole conversation and the description. And one of the things that you find is that people who use adjectives can describe things. If you can describe things, you can describe how you feel. And kids who can describe how they feel do better in school.
Okay.
Because they're calmer and they're not acting out and they're not bouncing off the walls and they're not going nuts because they can't describe what they're feeling.
Absolutely. And after these messages, more on is not just the number of words.
Are you or someone you know suffering from stress, anxiety, or depression? Have you experienced feelings of frustration due to lack of family and/or career support? Let's talk. Relationship issues got you down? Get the help you need. Contact Dr. Sheba Holly, mental health advisor and life coach, at clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly. If confidentiality, comfort, and convenience is important to you, guidance is provided on your terms. You deserve peace of mind. Contact Dr. Sheba Holly, mental health advisor and life coach, at clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly. Get answers now. Make your appointment today. Let's talk. Clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly.
You're now tuned in to Talks with Sheba. We have Dia Michels on with us today, and I am your host, Dr. Sheba Holly, on that word count. Now, you were saying, Dia, that there were a lot of disparities in how the parents communicate, not just how many words, because I've seen a lot of videos and just different things, TED Talks, about this whole word count thing, and it basically said you could have all these words said throughout the day, but they don't amount to anything.
Right. Well, let's talk about a few basics. The most important basic is that poverty does not condemn you to being a bad parent. Right. Statistically, more women in poverty speak less than women who aren't in poverty. Statistically, more women on welfare speak less than women who are working class. But the reality is anyone can be a good parent, so you're not condemned. I mean, that's the first thing.
Right.
I mean, if you talk, just listen to Ben Carson's childhood. There's plenty of people whose parents really made their childhood's rich. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first thing, is there's nothing that says if you have money and resources and an education, you are by definition going to be a great parent. That's not a given. And the same on the other end. So that's the first thing, is everyone's a human, everyone's an individual, everyone can do it any way they want. So then the question is, well, what's happening in those first few years? And so the thing that's happening is, as I said, all the 5 senses are firing. So you have to be hearing things, seeing things, smelling things, touching things, tasting things. And each time a sense is fired, the neurons are going. Well, it turns out that language is a particularly important sense. Our smell is important, but it's not nearly as developed as, the smell of a lion, for instance. So then the question is, well, what do we do with language? And language involves not just hearing words, but hearing what's being said. And so let me back up, because one of the things, too, that people say all the time is, well, if words are just so important, just turn the TV on. Just have the radio on. Mm-mm. You think that does it?
No, I doubt it very seriously.
Absolutely not. It has to be interactive. It has to be me talking to you and me responding to you, and the facial expressions and the touch and everything that goes into the whole experience. Right. And so they've even shown that kids who watch Sesame Street start off in school with a greater advantage, but then it fades away, which is interesting. Sesame Street is actually more, gives boys a bigger boost than it gives girls. I'm sure there's different ways that language learns, but it's not just sound, it's interaction. And so if you're talking about interaction, then one of the things you want to talk about is what's happening in that interaction. And there's a big difference between me saying, we need to go. Do you think you could put those fun shoes on? I love when you wear those fun shoes. Come on down, I'll help you tie them so we can get out the door faster, and then we can go have an adventure together. That's one message. It's another message to say, get your shoes on. We are late. I'm tired of you making me late all the time. I want you out the door now. Mm-hmm. It's the same reality, but a different message. And kids, surprisingly, kids who hear positive messages grow up feeling more competent than kids who hear negative messages. And so the more you get a message that says, did you figure that out all by yourself? You must be so smart. That kid is going to do better in life than the kid who's been told, oh, great, now we have to do this. And not getting the positive message. And so it's the same thing. You can have a lot of words, but the messaging is very important.
Messaging is very important. And just the fact, missed opportunities. Yeah. We're about to see a clip that gives a great example of what this looks like.
Like a snake. You see it? It's an S. So we have S and B. Look here. Oh, I love this one. N. You say it. N. Good.
Look, Mommy.
Oh, that's great, honey. Now go pick up that stuff in the hallway and put it back in the thing. You know, the big green one. Thanks. Like a snake. You see it? It's an S. So we have S and B. Look here. Oh, I love this one. N. You say it. N. Good.
Look, Mommy.
Oh, that's great, honey. Now go pick up that stuff in the hallway and put it back in the thing. You know, the big green one.
So those were great examples
Yes.
as to how there's
Absolutely.
missed opportunities. When you saw the young lady with the dishwasher and her daughter, and she said thanks, but she didn't say why she was saying thank you. I mean, that was
Right,
one word.
Right.
Thank you. I like the way
She
you are
down
being.
29 million more.
No, it's like thank you, thank you.
Exactly.
You know, but why are you saying thank you? And that goes also with when you're correcting a child too. It has to be close in proximity of the act, and also explain the why.
Exactly.
So that's more words. Also, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
negative, but it has to explain the why.
Yeah. And one of the things that no one, I haven't heard anyone use the phrase self-esteem gap, but it seems to me that the word gap and the self-esteem gap are essentially the same thing
Absolutely.
because of the messaging that goes through. And it's so interesting as a writer and a publisher and somebody whose entire life has been devoted to words, and the power of words to inspire people, right? I mean, the word is mightier than the sword, or the pen is mightier than the sword, right? So someone whose entire life has been about words, that this has now come up as words are it. It's very validating, I have to say. The thing that's not validating is this research, this 30 million research, is 60 years old.
Yes, it is. It's
60
nothing new.
years old?
It's not
No.
new.
Nothing new.
It's not new. It's
And-
just rehashed, and we want others to listen.
Right.
We just need people to listen.
Right, and in that time, we got Head Start and early Head Start. I'm not sure when Head Start is. Earlier Head Start came later. And then we got school reforms, and I mean, it's not like nothing's happened in those 60 years, but I assume this was new research. Because now it's all of a sudden the topic of the day, and this is what everybody talks about, and the word gap is everything, and we have to achieve the word gap. And there's, remember there's Race to the Top for
Yes,
schools?
yes, definitely.
Now
definitely.
they have like Race to the Word, right? And there's state competitions and national competitions. We got to
Spelling
come
bees
up,
are big
right,
now
with
again.
programs to inspire, parents to talk to their kids. Except it's 60 years old, this research. So that's the sad thing, that we've known about this for a long time, and didn't lower it down enough. And of course, I'm a little biased, but of course, if we simply promoted breastfeeding more, you wouldn't have to promote the word gap more, because you'd have women talking to their kids at the breast and not bottle propping in a corner. You'd have women involved, eye to eye, skin to skin, all the senses firing at the same time. And so since we've now learned this important lesson that you can't start at school, you can't start at preschool, you can't start at early Head Start, you have to start in the youngest years, it's pretty clear to me that if you promoted breastfeeding, you would be attacking the word gap. Because also, when you breastfeed, the mom gets oxytocin, the hormone that makes you happy.
Ooh.
Makes you happy, makes you bond to your child, makes you want to be with that child.
Yes.
And when you want to be with that child, the messaging is going to be positive. So instead of, you drop that bottle, pick that bottle up, that bottle's now got to wash that bottle, right? You don't have that conversation.
I'm so tired of you dropping that bottle.
Oh, look, you have another strand of hair today. Aren't you so handsome? You have more hair than you've ever had in your entire life, right? Because you've got that whole thing going that's hormonally linked.
Right, they're the greatest thing since sliced toast.
Right,
now.
right.
Yeah,
So now that
yeah.
we keep bringing the age back, we're still thinking toddler. I'd like to see it come back a little further, and then we get rid of self-esteem, and bad words and lack of words all at the same time. But the messaging is critical, the description is critical, the 5 senses is critical. It's all critical.
It's all
It's all critical.
It's all critical. And again, going back to the video, when you looked at the child that was sitting in a high chair and she was playing quietly, and you could see that the mother was pleased about her playing quietly,
Right.
or, being independent. She said nothing.
Well, think of the British model. Babies should be seen and not heard.
Oh, I heard that model here before.
Right.
I was like,
Right.
let's not say
That
it's
a
just
quiet baby is a good baby, right? And I had a friend once who, this cracked me up. They had one of those big fancy SUVs, you know, and we all had the Volvos and they had the SUVs. And they had the kids in the car seat, and they got the DVD player in the SUV, which this was all, you know, dating myself, but this was a big deal that you could have this in your car, right? And he said we had to get it because when we went for car rides, the kids would never shut up. Exactly. Car rides is when you have all those great conversations.
Right.
Car rides is when you're all together, you're facing the same way, you're looking at the same thing, you've got time. That's when you talk. And so when my friend said, I'm so glad we got that DVD player, they just wouldn't shut up in the car. I was thinking,
Wow.
yes, exactly.
And you know you had to keep a straight face.
Exactly. Right.
I'm not judging you right now.
Right.
But
But
I'm
you should talk
judging
to
you.
your kid in the car. All the best conversations are in the car.
I think so. When we would go for drives, I remember one time we were, I want to say we were driving to Jersey, and the children were little, my two oldest, and my oldest son, Michael, said, Mom, Dad, I want to make plans. And we looked back like, yeah, okay. What kind of plans? You know, we're egging them on. What kind of plans? Well, you know that go-kart I have? I would like to take my sister in it and we drive to King's Dominion.
Nice plan.
It was a dangerous plan.
Nice.
He was fine.
Right.
You know,
Well,
but
we wore a helmet. Yeah.
but I thought it was just adorable that he saw something in what we were doing and wanted to talk about it, and we
Yes.
listened.
Yes. And you probably responded with adjectives. Probably.
Yeah, it was so long
Yeah.
ago, but I'm sure we did.
Yes.
But he did describe it, and he was happy about how the whole process. He actually described the process of making plans as a 5-year-old.
But he had watched you make plans.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's the thing is, you know, you going back to the animals, you take a puppy or a kitten, right? Take the kitten. You don't have to teach the kitten how to hunt. You don't have to teach the kitten how to bury her poop. You don't have to teach the kitten, you know, to curl up in the sunshine. They know. You have to teach human stuff.
Yeah.
You have to teach humans. They don't know stuff.
A lot of stuff.
Right. And so the same thing, like the cat is going to grow up and is going to say meow. The
Automatically.
Right. The human may grow up and say bonjour or, you know, buenos dias or hello or ni hao or something. All of that is learned.
Well, you know what? A funny thing. Funny story. I had a little teacup Yorkie, and the breeder, the whole family was Vietnamese. So I kept saying, my dog doesn't listen to me.
You were speaking English.
I said, my dog does not listen to me. So I had him at the vet. I had her at the vet. And he asked me, he said, where did you get your dog? I said, a breeder. Where? I said, oh, you know, in the D.C., Maryland area, you know, on a farm or whatnot.
Right.
And he said, okay, who was there? And what language did they speak?
Really?
No kidding. I said, so you're telling me I need to learn some Vietnamese words.
To say to this
Stop,
dog.
go, come. Absolutely. He said, because they're just like the babies. The language that they hear, the commands and everything, that's how they respond. So I went to some friends
Did you
of mine.
really?
Yes.
You got a cheat sheet?
No, I didn't. I went and asked someone
Yeah.
Vietnamese to teach me some
That's
words.
what I mean.
Yes.
Did you learn where's the bathroom?
That's
the first phrase I always learn.
Well, it wasn't so much where's the bathroom,
Right.
but it was more so I wanted my dog to listen.
Yes.
So
yeah.
when I wanted her to come, I wanted her to come to me. I wanted her to stop because she was so tiny. She was this little thing, about 2 pounds.
So did it work?
Yeah, it did.
Cool.
It did.
Very
They were
cool.
just like children.
So you learned Vietnamese adjectives.
I sure did. Up next, we will learn the 3 T's: tune in, talk more, and take turns.
Are you or someone you know suffering from stress, anxiety, or depression? Have you experienced feelings of frustration due to lack of family and/or career support? Let's talk. Relationship issues got you down? Get the help you need. Contact Dr. Sheba Holly, mental health advisor and life coach, at clarity.fm Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly. If confidentiality, comfort, and convenience is important to you, guidance is provided on your terms. You deserve peace of mind. Contact Dr. Sheba Holly, mental health advisor and life coach at clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly. Get answers now. Make your appointment today. Let's talk. Clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly.
If you just tuned in, we're here with Dia Michels. I'm your host, Dr. Sheba Holly, and you are on Talks with Sheba. And we're talking about those words, you know, the 30 million word gap. What can we do? Tune in, talk more, and take turns. So let's talk about tuning in.
Well, tuning is what we've been talking about, which is interaction. Just
Listen.
right, and be present. Be with that kid.
And what if, you know, a lot of people don't know how to be present. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Well, you've got two things going on that didn't used to go on. One is everyone's working 24/7, right? You got two career households, and you've got people working around the clock. I mean, I'll send out emails at 1 a.m. regularly. I get responses all the time.
1 a.m.
Yes, I'm thinking, okay, I know what my problem is, but I don't know what your problem is. Right. So, I mean, it's a constant, right? So people are working more than they've ever worked. People are working, you know, not just 9 to 5 and going home and being done with it. And we've got the screens, the endless screens. Have you walked into Starbucks? You see two people at a table. It's like so typical. You see two people at a table. They both have a laptop in front of them, and they're both on their phones. There's the fact there's a person 3 feet away is irrelevant. You walk into a restaurant, people are on their phones. You're standing in line, people are on their phones. Well, if you're on your phone, what are you not doing?
Tuning in. You're not paying attention.
Exactly. You're not talking to a kid.
Definitely not.
That's for sure.
You're not talking to an adult.
Right. So you're telling people to tune in, which you didn't used to have to tell people.
Right.
Right. You were home. Mom was home making dinner. Dad came home from the office. There was no email to check. Right. And so the tune in is the simple message of get off the computer, get off the phone, turn the TV off, close the laptop, and talk to each other. So that's the first message. That's the tune in.
And not only that with the tune in, and I'm really big on listening because, of course,
that's what you do.
Absolutely provide mental health services, and I like to listen. I actually do like to listen, and some of us don't. We compete to talk to one another. Yeah. It's not a conversation anymore. Listening is special. And people forget how special it is. And not only with adults, but with children. And this is where it really counts. Because they need to see us model listening.
Yes.
And I grew up in the Bronx. I love my family. But we talk over each other.
You don't listen, you just talk.
just talk over each other. And we have to learn to just listen to what someone has to say. Wait for that time.
Yeah.
Respond. It's like a dance.
Yes.
It's definitely like a dance.
Well, and people want to know they've been heard.
That's important. It makes you feel special.
Yes. The Imago, one of the groups that teaches people how to communicate.
Okay.
I'll think of it. One of their recipes is that you respond to people by saying, "That makes sense." Right.
I get that.
Yeah. So that makes sense. It's not saying you're absolutely right. It's not saying you're wrong. It's not saying anything other than, "I heard you." And if you say that makes sense, then you know you've been heard and that it's safe to continue. But nobody is saying that makes sense if they're on their phone, right, doing this. So yes, you want to talk, you want to be heard, and you want to be acknowledged.
And just imagine if they're being taught that at a young age, that being heard is valued. Listening is valued.
Well, and that if you're in the room, somebody notices, right? I mean, you've had this thing. See, I'm thinking you walk in the room, everyone's on their phones. It doesn't matter who's there, right? So tune in's number one.
Yep. Talk more.
Yes, which is hard for the introverts, to be fair. For me, it's pretty natural. But yeah, but I mean, you just think about how ironic it is that we now need to take federal tax dollars to tell people to talk to their children.
It's insane.
It's insane. It's insane. And who would have thought, from those of us who are so word focused, that talking would be king? Like, oh, I do what you're supposed to do effortlessly because I'm a talker. So, but yes, so you have to tune in, talk more.
But what do you talk about? Because some people just don't know what to talk about.
Well, the kid, it's easy. Whatever's walking by, the ant on the sidewalk, the cloud in the sky, the ambulance going by, where you're going to go, what you're having for dinner. I mean, you just talk. You just talk about the sweater you're wearing, talk about what you're going to wear tomorrow, talk about if you should take the bus or the subway. I mean,
and why are we doing it?
Right.
Wise.
Exactly. So, and the third one?
And the third one is take turns.
Which is what you were saying. Is
Yes, just wait and listen. It all boils
Yes.
down to the same thing. We need to listen. We need to talk because we need to value one another.
Yeah. I was watching one of the TED Talks on the word gap recently, and they were showing what happens when they call it, I think they called it like stone face mom.
Stone face mom.
Something like that, where the experiment is that mom is in the room, but she doesn't react, doesn't speak, doesn't smile. She's just there. And the kid goes through a predictable series of maneuvers to try to get mom to interact. Finally ends up, of course, in total hysterics. Total breakdown, right? Because stone-faced mom, but that's, in a sense, it's the same as the TV, right? It's somebody there, but not there for you.
Right.
And the stone-faced mom thing is pretty horrible to watch because the kid is trying so hard. You know, first they make sounds, then they try to be cute, then they try to make demands, then there's like this whole routine that every kid goes through before they lose it. And then they lose it.
But you know, that breaks my heart.
Yes, it was not a fun experiment to watch.
No, that breaks my heart because it also could make that child feel like they're not loved.
Right. And they're not safe. And you can't grow if you don't feel safe. So it's not just talk more, it's take turns, because it's the actual interaction that makes the difference to the neurons. The brain needs response, stimulus, continual, back and forth. And so that's the thing. This is a campaign I found online that it's called Touch, Talk, Read, Play. Okay. But those are wires. But it's the same thing, having to teach people that they should touch their own children. Yes. Don't even go there. That's crazy. Having to teach kids to talk. And for me, the publisher and the book person, promoting reading,
right?
Of course, that's good. And play, because when you're playing, you're talking to each other, right? Whatever
I love
you're
it.
playing,
Puppet.
You're or
puppeteering,
or checkers. I mean,
definitely.
You're still talking, and then you could add to the list, cook, run, shop, anything that involves interaction. But on some levels, it's so sad. It's so sad that you have to tell parents to touch their children, to talk to their children, to read to their children. On the other hand, I'd rather they tell them that than smoke cigarettes or, all the things. Think about all the things that we've done. Smoke cigarettes, don't eat eggs. There have been a lot of things that we've tried to educate people for that probably, we could have spent money better by not buying the tobacco in the first place.
Right.
So, but there's all these campaigns about reminding parents to talk to their kids. and put the phones down and pick them up. And again, not to beat a dead horse. Of course, there were no dead horses in this conversation. But if they were breastfeeding, they would be touching.
Right.
They would be talking. They would probably play after the baby finished. And maybe they'd pick up a book and read, and it would happen naturally and be hormonally driven.
I wish I had some of your books here.
I brought one.
You did bring
I brought
one?
two, actually.
Oh, okay, great.
I brought the brand new one. You'll get a kick out of this. So
Ooh.
this is Nurtured and Nuzzled. So this is bilingual and Spanish-English and beautiful, sweet pictures. But it's a very simple book, as you can see. Not very many pages. I think it's 24 pages in all. But the teacher's guide is 64 pages. And the teacher's guide is full of all sorts of interesting things to do with kids because that was off camera. Try that again. But all these great animal pictures and flashcards and things to do, because the fact that a book is 24 pages doesn't mean you're done with it when you put it down.
Right.
Because now we have a way to find all 5 senses and connect the book to all 5 senses and have activities to touch and talk and read and play.
And that's what I like. And that's why I said, what are they going to talk about? A lot of people don't know what to talk about with their children, but it does start with reading. Read to them. Have
it starts
something.
with breastfeeding.
It starts with breastfeeding. Guard your breast. She's coming for you. No, I totally believe in breastfeeding. But that, yes, it starts with breastfeeding.
And
then you grab the book.
Reading, exactly. Pick up the book.
Then you grab the book.
This one will be out in February. This is a beautiful page. Look at this page.
Love it. The colors are beautiful.
Colors and the interaction and the language. And so this one's in English and Spanish. But yes, what we get a kick out of, and if you open the teacher's guide,
I love
the very
teacher's
first
guide.
section is, why do you need a 64-page teacher's guide for a 24-page book?
Lots of reasons.
And there's lots of reasons. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Let me see that. I want to touch it. I love it. The colors are beautiful.
So it'll be out in February, which, as you know, will be here
Gorgeous.
very soon.
And a teacher's guide. I'm an educator, so
Yeah,
this
teacher's
totally
guide.
makes sense to me.
And all the teacher's guides are free downloads.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Free download. And where can your books be?
Oh, our website is platypusmedia.com. So platypus is Platypus, as in if my mother were a platypus. So platypusmedia.com. This is one of our other books. Also about mother-child interactions, and also has a teacher's guide. But any way that we can find to use language and vision to language and imagery to promote closeness and connection, so that that child feels safe and the child's being touched and talked to and played with, so that when they do hit school, they're ready for that adventure as well.
So, you breastfed? Did you breastfeed?
Yeah, for a while.
Look, so, like I didn't already know that.
Yes. But my oldest is 26. I don't know how that happened. I really don't.
It happened overnight.
I know. Did. Seems like it. She just got thrown off our health insurance. That's how you know she's 26.
Oh.
Yeah, it used to be 21 was a big
Right,
deal. Now
right.
it's 26.
But that was kind of weirding me out too. I'm like, you are a grown person on my health insurance.
I know, but they've always been there. It just seems like that's what you do. If you're a parent, you have them on your health insurance. So
Interesting.
So
But you have other pamphlets that you use
lots.
because you
Yes.
want to make sure you reach various communities and ethnicities, and
Right.
there was one that I envisioned in particular where it has the African American family and it has the grandmother, the father, the mother, and the children, and then the Latino family was the mother. Correct me if I'm wrong. The mother and the baby, and who else was?
Yeah. That's in this book.
Is it?
Yeah. Here's the Latino mom. Latina.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the family.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have a bunch of pamphlets. We have a really lovely one written by a doula here in Washington, D.C. You should have her on your show.
Okay.
She's named Claudia Booker, and she wrote one called Grow a Healthy Baby, Keep a Healthy Baby. So half of it's prenatal, half of it's postnatal. And we have Breastfeeding Facts for Fathers, which is one of our bestsellers. We have a beautiful coloring book not beautiful, it's black and white, for families that have a baby in a NICU, in the neonatal intensive care unit, and want something to educate the older kids on why the baby can't come home. So lots of resources to help families feel connected and stay, in tune with each other.
Yeah, and it's really important, and you advocate for
Yeah.
this also, that it's important, and a lot of times the decision is made with the father whether or not the mother breastfeeds.
Well, it's interesting because, again, if you break it out by income, it's the spouse, generally a man, sometimes married, sometimes not married, who's the major person who helps with the breastfeeding decision, except in the groups where poverty is dominant, and then it's usually the mother.
The mother of the mother?
Yes,
Okay.
because there is no partner, or the partner's not as involved. Or the partner's too young or whatever, but there's always a person that helps, but sometimes it's the mother and sometimes it's the spouse.
Okay.
So.
So as a recap,
Yes.
we know we want to tune in, talk more, and take turns. That's important. And listen, the whole thing is about listening, interacting, sparking those neurons.
Growing those neurons, making
Growing them.
connections. It's interesting too, because what the public health experts will tell you is, if you're a native Spanish speaker or if you're a native anything speaker, to talk to your kid in that language, because your neurons are firing. Your neurons don't care what language it is, and the more comfortable you are, the more you're going to talk and tune in and take turns. So they say, don't worry about what language you speak. Don't worry about whether you speak 2 languages or 3 languages or 4 languages. Don't worry about whether the kid's bilingual, or it doesn't matter. Just talk.
Just talk.
And don't worry about if your English isn't perfect. Talk in whatever language you're comfortable with.
And use adjectives.
Yes.
That's a beautiful blue and black and silver shirt you have on.
I love it.
I love that shirt too.
Nice adjective.
Just, expand the language. Just expand the language. That's very important. And I want to thank you, Dia, for coming on. We really appreciate you talking to us about the breastfeeding, about the words and why they're so important, those adjectives, and the messaging. The messaging is critical.
So important. Yes. There's a famous quote from Henry Ford that says, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right.
Oh, I know that one.
Yes, but talk about messaging, right? If you think, the same thing, they take a group of girls going into, I think it's usually done with like a 7th grade math test, and they say to one group of girls, you've got it. You have so got it. You just go in, show them what you've got, ace that test. And you take the second group of girls and say, I don't know, this material's hard. This is really tough stuff. Who's going to do better on that test?
The ones with the positive message.
Exactly. Messaging is key.
Messaging is definitely
Yes.
key. Wow. Well, thank you, Dia, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it was fantastic. It's always fantastic to talk to you. I
To
really,
talk to me.
Yeah, you know
didn't
what?
talk to me?
I said I was from the Bronx. Didn't I tell you that?
Let's talk some more. You want coffee with that?
Yeah, I want some coffee.
Regular? I don't even drink coffee.
Oh, neither do I. Oh, it makes me hyper. Makes me want to talk. Right? Talk with Sheba. Well, I do appreciate you coming on with us. It's been a pleasure. The audience needs to know this is something we need to talk about, talk more to those kids, tune into those kids, and take turns. That's what really, really matters.
Absolutely.
So, and it's about, what time is it? It's about time for, who does that?
What is Who Does That?
Who does that is when I get the craziest news off a reel that talks about some craziness that we just can't understand. So what I have today,
Okay, I'm ready.
yeah, oh, you're ready?
I'm
Okay.
sitting down. I'm ready. Okay.
So a transgender woman is forced to stay in an all-male prison despite repeated rapes.
That's horrible.
I know it is. And
That's a horrible story.
it's horrible. Not only that, it's in Texas.
At least they didn't shoot her.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's just horrible. And there's been complaints going on. Well, if you don't know what a transgender person is, well, this is a transgender woman. So
Yeah.
this is someone who was labeled a male at birth but identifies as a female at some point in their life. And just think about it. There are school systems in which if you are a transgender person, you can actually use the bathroom of the sex that you identify with.
Right.
Not too many people know that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I live in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. And that's how I know, because I'm here too. So, but I learned it the hard way. I didn't see the regulations. I was working in a school in the metropolitan area.
Okay.
And I would see, we would have to share the bathrooms with the students. They were older. It was a high school.
Right.
And someone said, that person's transgender. And I said, oh, no, that's a girl. She looked like a girl, act like a girl,
Dressed like a girl.
dressed like a girl.
Yeah.
And I said, if she wasn't, then why was she in the bathroom with me? Oh, let's show you the regulation for that. So that I found that to be very interesting.
Yeah.
I was comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want that person to feel uncomfortable
Right.
using the restroom or feel in danger.
Yeah.
That's why I found this to be very interesting about the transgender woman being in a
It's
prison.
a tricky thing. I have a friend who's in the beginning of becoming a transgender male. And they have him using the nurse's bathroom in the school. But what they said is, you can't go in the girls' bathroom. You're not safe in the boys' bathroom. So you have to go in a private bathroom. And the private bathroom is fine, but it's pretty sad to think that
isolated.
he wouldn't be safe.
Right.
That's like this one.
Not safe
Not
at all.
safe.
Not safe at
Not
all. And
safe.
they haven't done anything about it. And my prayers go out, because that's a scary thing. No matter
That's
what
a
you've done in
horrible
life,
thing.
someone always needs to know they're safe, just like children need to know they're safe. We need to know we're safe.
Absolutely.
So it's a wrap for us tonight. Thanks for joining us on this marvelous Monday. And remember, work like you don't need the money, love like you've never been hurt,
with Sheba.
and dance like nobody's
Be
looking.
empowered.
We'll talk later.
I didn't realize the clock there. I was thinking.
Listen Vision, Listen Vision, DC's #1 recording studio. Listen Vision, Listen Vision. Listen Vision, Listen Vision, DC's #1 recording studio. Listen Vision, Listen Vision. Listen Vision, Listen Vision. Listen Vision, Listen Vision, DC's #1 recording studio.